But notice verse 12. The herbs yield seeds and fruit trees yield fruit. It says, according to its kind. That's an important phrase, according to its kind. You know what that means? That means an apple tree will always produce apples. It will never produce grapes. It will never produce lemons. An apple tree always produces apples. They yield seed according to their kind. Notice it says the same thing down in verse 21 about the sea life and about birds. Verse 21, so God created the great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. We see it with the land animals in verse 24. Then God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle, creeping things, and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind. Vegetation and animals reproduce according to their kind. Now, this phrase, according to their kind, it allows for variation within a kind. It allows for adaptation within a kind or within a species. That is sometimes referred to as microevolution, variation, adaptation. For example, there's a whole bunch of different dogs, isn't there? I mean, you've got domestic dogs like Chihuahuas and St. Bernards and Collies and Poodles. You've got wild dogs like coyotes and dingoes and foxes. But they're all dogs. They're all one kind. And there's variation within that kind or within that species. And the Bible allows for variation within a kind or within a species. But the Bible does not allow for one species becoming another species. In other words, a dog cannot become something other than a dog. It's going to stay within its kind. That would be what's known as macroevolution, where they claim that one species evolves into some other species entirely. I was at the Natural History Museum last Monday, and they had a display where they had a bone from a whale and a bone from a white-tailed deer, and the bones were similar in appearance, and the sign explained that they both evolved from a common ancestor because they have similar bone structure, this one bone that matches. So they must have... No, the Bible doesn't allow for that. That's how the evolutionist interprets that. But the creationist looks at that and says, well, they have a common designer, not a common ancestor. Okay, so you can have variation within a kind, but everything stays within its kind. It doesn't change from one kind to another kind. And that's true both with vegetation and animals. We see that according to its kind, according to its kind. Now, listen, when we get to the creation of man in like 6,000 years, when we get to the creation of man, it does not say that man was created according to his kind. Why not? Because according to the Bible, there is just one kind of man, mankind. And that's it. Now we like to point out differences between mankind. We like to point out differences in races and that kind of thing. But in the Bible, there's one race. There's the human race. And that's it. Created in the image of God. There's not a whole bunch of different kinds of people or man. There's just mankind. God doesn't make those kinds of distinctions in His Word. So that brings us to verse 13, the completion of the third day. And then verse 14, we have the fourth day. On the fourth day, God created the celestial bodies, the stars, the sun, and the moon. Now, for those that say that the days of Genesis are really ages and each day represents millions of years, the fourth day creates a problem for that interpretation, because you have vegetation created on the third day, you've got the sun created on the fourth day. And if those days represent millions of years, you've got vegetation existing for millions of years before the sun is created. And that ain't going to happen. This is not a problem if you take Genesis literally, to be ordinary days. Verse 14. So verse 14 it says, "Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so." Again, instantly, it's done. The sun and moon and stars, boom, they're there in place in the heavens. And we're told that the purpose of these celestial lights include, dividing the day from the night, serving as signs, it says. And this can even refer to navigational signs, using the constellations to navigate. Job talks about that in Job 38. It can refer to prophetic signs. Jesus said there would be signs in the sun, moon, and stars before the Son of Man comes. They are given to us for seasons and for counting days and years and measuring the passage of time, and to give light on the earth. So the sun, moon, and stars are created for the benefit and purpose of the earth and for mankind in particular. Verses 16 to 18 kind of expand on this now. Verse 16, "Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day," that's the sun, "and the lesser light to rule the night," that's the moon. "He made the stars also." I love how it says that. There's over 100 billion stars in just our galaxy. 100 billion stars. And the way it reads here in Genesis is like, oh yeah, by the way, He made the stars also. I almost forgot to mention. He made the stars. And then listen to this. Psalm 147 says, He calls them all by name. Not only did He make them, He named them. And He knows them. And He calls them all by name. And I just want to close quickly with looking at Psalm 8, if you want to turn there with me. And we'll finish with this. Psalm 8, written by David. Look at verse 3. David says, "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers." Isn't that amazing that he describes it that way? The heavens, the sun and the moon and the stars, 100 billion stars just in the Milky Way. And David says, it's your finger work. Yeah, it's just your finger work. It's just... Now, for him to make 100 billion stars, it's just, it's just his finger work. Now, for God, listen, give me your attention. Making 100 billion stars and the sun and the moon, it's just finger work. It's like finger painting. It's nothing. Now, to save you from sin, to save you from hell, to provide forgiveness for us, well, that required God becoming a man, putting on human flesh, offering His entire body as a sacrifice on the cross for us. Which required more for God to do? Stars, that's finger work. It's nothing. To save you, to save me, to provide redemption for us, well, that required everything, offering Himself to save us. David here, he's looking up at the stars, and man, when I consider the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars, which you have ordained, then he says in verse 4, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? David's mind's blown. Lord, if I look up at the sky and I see all those stars, and I see the sun and the moon, and I think, why do you even bother with us? Why do you even think about us? Why are you even concerned? Why would you visit us? So not only does God think about us, but he loves us. The Bible says his thoughts of us are more than can be numbered. He's thinking about us all the time. And he loves us. And he loves us so much that he was willing to leave heaven and come down to this earth to rescue us and to redeem us by offering himself as a sacrifice on the cross. Because that was what it would take to save us. He couldn't just do finger work to save us like he did with the stars. He had to come off his throne and leave majesty and glory, and he had to come down here to this earth and step in for us, stand in for us, to rescue us and offer himself as a sacrifice in our place. Because he loves us and because he wants to spend eternity with us, and that's what it took to save us.